In a world where education is key, finding the right math program for your kids is crucial. And that's where CTC Math steps in. This isn't just another math program, it's a comprehensive math curriculum covering everything from K to 12. What sets it apart? The video tutorials. They're not just educational, they're engaging, breaking down complex topics into bite-sized, understandable pieces. It's like having a math expert in your home, available anytime. And it's not about memorizing facts. It's about truly understanding math concepts. The kind of understanding that sticks with them, not just until the next test, but for life. Plus, the flexibility is unbeatable. Whether you're homeschooling or supplementing after-school learning, CTC Math fits into your schedule, not the other way around. Why not take the leap? Visit ctcmath.com today and start your free trial. Discover how a comprehensive curriculum can challenge your child's perspective on math. It's time to give them the tools they need to succeed. That's ctcmath.com.
This is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. Welcome to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Your host, Felice Gerwitz, is an author, a publisher, and your radio show host. She will encourage, educate, and inspire you with answers to your most pressing questions from homeschool, marriage, parenting, and much more. Felice loves to equip moms to live a Christian life because every moment counts. Be sure to visit her website at mediaangels.com. And here's your host, Felice Gerwitz.
Do you have to nag your teen to complete their schoolwork, do the laundry, or maybe get up in the morning? If so, this podcast is one you both need to hear. What are those prerequisites for a long-lasting and satisfying career? Well, tune in to find out, because it starts in the home. Hey friends, and welcome. My name is Felice Gerwitz, and today is an episode of Vintage Homeschool Moms. We are going to discuss the prerequisites for a long-lasting and satisfying career. This is episode 564, and you can find today's show notes at vintagehomeschoolmoms.com. And I'd appreciate a shout out if you would share this podcast with a friend and relax. We've got a great show for you today. If you haven't checked out the other show, which is on AI, tech jobs, and blue-collar workers, you may want to check that one out as well. And it's on the Vintage Homeschool Moms website, as well as on your favorite podcast app. I also want to give a shout out to our sponsor, and that is ctcmath.com. Be sure to click that homeschool link for your discount. My grandkids have enjoyed it for the last 3 years. I wish this program had been around when I was homeschooling my kids, who are all graduates now, and it is wonderful, and they really like doing math. So for any mom to hear that, and grandma, it's a wonderful thing. So check that out. They are a longtime sponsor of the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network, as well as the show Vintage Homeschool Moms. So we thank them for that, because our sponsors bring this show, as well as many others on our network, to you for free. Well, as homeschool families, grounded in faith, at least our family is, we know the value of preparing our kids, not just academically, but with the character and skills that honor God's design for work as a form of stewardship. Sometimes we feel that we're lacking, but with God, all things are possible, including the impossible, as I like to say. If you have a child like mine who lost their math book every single day, at least once, you may wonder if that child would grow up to be a welcome member of society. Well, the good news is yes. The child in question is a college grad in 3 years and is now a very organized homeschool mom of 9 children who co-authored some books with me when she was a homeschool teen. It can be done, but it takes persistence, perseverance, and tenacity to follow through with your children. But what about fulfilling work and a fulfilling work life and long-lasting career? Well, my husband jokingly says that work is what you do, and it doesn't necessarily need to be something you love. Before college, where he received a full-ride baseball scholarship, he sold all of his carpentry tools, and he told his dad, "I'm never going to do that again." Well, fast forward to post-college, and 2 years later, he was married to me, and he started his own construction company. We decided it was the fastest way to make a good income so I could stay home with our children when we had them. I had a degree in education and taught middle school for 2 years, and I was ready to retire. Little did I know that I would not go back as we had planned when I had school-aged children, and instead homeschooled all 5 children. My husband and I believe that often a job, even if it's not a dream job, is designed for an income to support a family. If you have that dream job and you're making a decent salary, God bless you, because that is wonderful. As homeschoolers, many of us moms and dads are living on a single income, and with that comes budgeting and decisions on job selection based on the idea of mom staying home. As a side note, my husband and I prayed, and he actually prayed specifically for the fact that he would not dislike his job so much. And instead, the Lord filled his heart with gratitude, and he does like what he does now. So that, again, is a miracle. Today, our topic focuses on some of the attributes that are necessary to find and keep a job. I believe this is important. I mean, my husband and I struggle, both of us in our different careers, to find people to work that are going to show up, and do what they're supposed to be doing. And I believe it's something that's not often discussed regarding blue-collar workers, and they are every bit as important if you're considering this field as a possibility. There are skills you need before deciding what job you want to do, and going on a job hunt or even starting a job really requires you to sit down and think out some of these things and say, is this me, or do I need to work on this aspect? The first is, are you self-motivated and self-disciplined? Even if you're not working for yourself, this is important. Employers look for personnel who actually show up for work versus those who are slack or sick or have to, the dog ate their paper or their driver's license. I mean, it gets ridiculous, all of the excuses that people have. The person who has to be woken up to do schoolwork or nag to complete chores is not going to last long in a competitive job field. So what's important is that you establish daily routines in your homeschool schedule to build habits of punctuality and consistency, such as starting your lessons on time or setting a time to do them in the morning. The child I talked about earlier that lost her math book in high school decided she wanted to work on writing the novels, and so she had to get her schoolwork done before we could even attempt to do that. And so before she even came down in the morning for breakfast, she would finish her math. She picked the hardest subject for her, got it completed, so that was one thing that was difficult off her to-do list at the very first thing in the morning. And she became very self-disciplined in that way. That was something she figured out herself when we sat down and talked about some of these things that were important. You can assign, if you're a parent, independent projects that require self-starting, like researching a trade skill and completing a report without reminders, or helping to figure out your school schedule for the year. What's it going to be? When are you going to do these things and get them done so that will free up time for you to do other things? You can also use chores or family responsibilities that mimic job deadlines. That was one of the things we did too, is that we would set down deadlines that things had to be done. I do this with myself. Even when I was writing books, I would set myself a deadline saying it has to be done, before the new school year. It has to be done, before we get out in the summer, so that I would be done with that big project and I could focus on homeschooling. So you want to teach values like reliability, and that seems to be an important thing, especially if you've ever have the opportunity to wait for somebody to fix your plumbing pipes or, come fix the cable and they don't show up? And that's very, very disappointing. You can learn a lot on YouTube. Sure, set your, permissions and your settings so that you are on safe settings. But many teens and tweens use YouTube to teach themselves all kinds of things. You can search for beginning tutorials, and that's how my son learned a lot about mechanics. There are lots of basics such as carpentry and electrical wiring and safety, and you can even integrate those things into weekly homeschool electives. You can use lots of free video series that are out there and that focus on practical skills, and you can also pair them up with hands-on follow-up activities at home to test what was learned. A lot of times we did oral presentations in our home so that we would go through what the kids learned. And yes, I had them write a paper, so I had that for their portfolios, but it was one way that we used to keep track of what they were doing. And then, of course, track your progress by creating a homeschool portfolio. And if they've done anything like, do-it-yourself projects that can demonstrate initiative for future employers or even the trades, that's something that you can have at the ready in case you have to show things like that. The third point is apprenticeship, and I really believe this is one of the best ways to learn what you want to do. We had a friend's son. He actually worked with me at different times during conferences when I spoke at homeschool conferences, and I remember him saying one time that he thought he wanted to be a doctor. So we introduced him to a friend of ours who was a doctor, and after shadowing him and going to see one of his surgeries, he decided that medicine was not for him. And he did the same thing with other, different, actually white-collar jobs and professional jobs. And he ended up becoming a flight pilot in the Air Force. And so, you can do things like that by apprenticing or even shadowing someone to see if that's something that you want to do. So ask your friends, your local church or community, and see if there is someone who has, maybe an HVAC company or a welder or somebody where you could at least see what it is they're doing without a full-time commitment and start like that. You can start a short-term shadowing, with people like I shared with you. And then again, document your reflections afterwards and put it in a notebook. So at least you can, say, well, these are the good things about this profession and these are the things I really don't like. And then you can, use that as a basis to help you to discern if you have a vocational calling or maybe some other blue collar work. Financials are important. How much are you going to make in the near future? And what is the pay increase in your field? And how is that going to set you up in the future to support a family or contribute to the family income? And I know I get a lot of pushback when I talk about single incomes, not so much in the homeschool world, but in other worlds out there. And while I do have a business, I never started my business as a full-time career. I work it full-time now, but not when I was homeschooling. It was part-time. And there are some moms out there who have done super well in social media or blogging and things like that. And then I always find out, oh my gosh, they put their children back in school because they didn't have time to homeschool. So while it might be a good financial opportunity to contribute to the family, you want to look at what is your overall goal for your family. And so there are some links here that you can look into that has some of the Bureau of Labor and Statistics that talk about some of, the opportunities out there. But helping your children to create a budget and look at what it takes to just run a household. And it takes a lot of money between, even if you don't have a mortgage and have your house paid off, or let's say you're paying rent, there's a lot of things that go into just surviving for the month. I was looking at this one town, and it was saying something like you need $9,000 for a family of 4 to live comfortably in that area. Well, $9,000 is a heck of a lot of money. And, that's saying that you have an income of more than $80,000 saving nothing, So I don't know that it counts for any savings, but it's expensive to live today. And so you need to look at careers that are going to help, with whatever your goals are. If you are expecting to stay home after you have children, or if you're hoping to contribute, for a few years, these are things that you should look at. And creating a budget will definitely help. And then look at long-term projections for job stability. Skilled trades are easier to find more work in. I mean, it depends. There have been times when there hasn't been any construction work out there. And times like now, even though it is slower, we still are looking for people who are very competent and know what they're doing. So you want to look at things that are going to be in line with your family priorities. The other is being flexible. Some people are just not flexible, and that is a big detriment to jobs. Many jobs require flexibility because things don't always go right. So you need to practice being adaptable even in your own home. You can do that by adjusting lesson plans, or, if you have your plans for the year, look at it and break it up into, quarters, or every 3 months you're changing something, because that allows you to have some flexibility. I know sometimes, and this sounds silly, but we did it, that we would go outdoors and do some of our schoolwork. So you're going to do things a little bit different especially if you're not adaptable. If this is not an issue, move on and go to the next thing. But it's important, to do those group projects or to work with other people. Also, it's important to incorporate problem-solving skills. For example, think of it as, if you have a home repair, if the toilet overflows, what do? What's the first thing you do? If you know where the water turnoff is, that's the first thing you do. If there's one right there where the toilet is that actually works, wonderful. If not, then what do? Do you know where your water shutoff is on the outside of the house? Just things like that. And, going through simple home repairs, to building resiliency when plans deviate, and look at that. Look at troubleshooting. And then your ability to follow instructions. Are you teachable? This is important, especially when working with other people. No one wants to hire a know-it-all, especially one who is extra talkative or wants to boss other people around. If you're new to the job, listen, take outside cues, and learn. You may have your chance to be boss at some point, but entry level is not that. And how do you do that? Well, you give your kids tasks that emphasize step-by-step instructions. Things that, for example, a recipe. Following a recipe is very important. Now, I'm a longtime baker, and I love to bake and try new recipes. And I found one for a homemade chocolate cake. And if you're like me, you're trying to avoid seed oils and all of those other nasty things that are put into, prepackaged things. And I'm all like, oh, we don't use prepackaged. Oh, but I still use cake mix because it's easy. So I found one, and oh my gosh, I looked at that recipe and put it aside. And I looked at it again and put it aside. Why? It had so many darn steps. But I finally decided, okay, I'm going to make it. And one of the things it required was 4 eggs and 2 egg yolks. And those had to be beat for a certain amount of time. And then you had to take, a specific type of chocolate that is in a bar, not in chocolate chips because of the melt, temperature difference. And you take that and you melt it in a double boiler with cocoa and some water. And you stir that so it kind of makes a pudding. And then, oh my gosh, there was like 300 steps, not that many, but a lot. Well, I finally did it all, and I'm going to tell you it was not easy. And that cake was one of the most delicious chocolate cakes we ever tasted. So basically, what I'm saying is even people like myself who know how to bake and am successful at it, doing things with step-by-step instructions because there's a reason why helps us to hone in that obedience that sometimes we're lacking. Okay, so it's never too old. You're never too old to learn. And then have some feedback. My feedback was, what did everyone think about the cake? And that also teaches humility when something doesn't go really well, especially when you're cooking, and openness to correction. And that is a key to growing, not only in a home, but also in the trades. And then if there is an opportunity to pair with mentors in faith-based groups who model, all of these biblical values, then that's wonderful as well. I was never able to mentor because my business is out of my home. And so in order to get someone college level that I would be able to mentor, it wasn't going to be allowed, and for obvious reasons, because it was in my home. But I was really blessed some years ago to do a mentoring workshop with some ladies from all over. We did it in Tampa, Florida a few years ago. And it was such a blessing. And that actually is online if anybody's interested in it. It's on the mediaangels.com website. And it was really geared for women, who have a message and want to get their message out to other people, and how to do that using, a platform. And the other is the ability to get along. Not everyone needs to be your best friend, but getting along with others is essential. And you can do things in a homeschool co-op, community, or at church, or role-playing conflict resolution scenarios. One of the things that I did with my character quality activity packs, and I have 24 of them on the website, so they're in 2 different 12-pack series, is to give a lot of role-playing conflict resolutions. You didn't have to act it out, but you could have just written your answer down if a certain situation happened. And a lot of times, you kids just don't know what to do, and it's important. So look at that in relationship to workplace harmony. What if somebody says, well, I don't like you because you're Christian? What do you say back? You have to look at things. And this is something my son, who is the Uber driver, has sometimes run into issues with. People that he's picked up for a ride screaming at each other, and being very disruptive. And, he's had to say, if you don't calm down, I'm just going to have to pull over and let you both out. There are some things you can say nicely. And if that doesn't work, you just pull over and, you call the authorities if necessary. But you have to know what to do. And then you can also foster, team-based learning at home, especially if you have a larger family, and do things like volunteer and do service projects. I know that my husband does some work for Habitat for Humanity, and there's a lot of opportunities for people to get together to help build a house, and that's wonderful as a prerequisite and a skill. Another is tenacity. Do you have the ability to stick with something or the motivation to try something and do it to the best of your ability? Well, I'm going to tell you that as a podcast platform owner, I own the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network. I have had podcasters who have not been able to stick to a contract or even complete a 1-year contract. And that requires 12 episodes or 24 episodes. You could do 1 a week, or, 1 every other week, or just do 1 a month. And so they weren't even able to hit the minimum. And that means that, it's difficult for me as an owner, and it's difficult for them because they might start having people listen to their podcast. Have you ever done that? Listen to a podcast and then it's gone? I can proudly say that this podcast has been on air for 12 years, so it can be done, but it means setting long-term goals and being able to be persevering and have perseverance is what I'm trying to say. And there's always challenges. Like this was not the episode I was meaning to do. I had a couple of interviews that I had done that I wanted to play, but I needed to pivot because this is a timely topic that's coming up now and people are asking about it. So we have to be able to change, but we also have to have the ability to stick to it. And also, you can try to do something like that yourself. What is something that you want to get done, and set yourself some, long-term goals to do it. Maybe you want to read the Bible in a year. Set that as a goal and do it. If you skip 1 day or 2 days, still go back and listen or read. I was listening to Father Mike Schmidt's Bible in a Year, and it took me 3 years to get through it. Did I quit? No. Was I able to just sit and listen through every single day? Well, I probably could have, but I stuck with it. And it wasn't anyone, who I needed to prove that I could do it in a year. It was just myself and something that I wanted to do slowly so I could really think about what he said and incorporate it into my life. You can also research Mike Rowe and how he made a whole, television series out of dirty jobs. But if you go back and watch some of those episodes, it's really cool because you can see what some of the different jobs entail. Number 9 is discernment. Trying your hardest doesn't always mean success, and understanding your capabilities and knowing when a job is not a good fit is important. We had to do that with our oldest. While it was easy to just go into construction because his father owned a company, it was not his best fit. He was too precise, he was too slow, and there were just a lot of other things that didn't fit his personality and his abilities. So he ended up moving on to another job that fit him better until he's got the job that he has now. The job he has now is a lot of hours, and it takes sitting around and sometimes being bored. But it is also rewarding for him because he's a people person. So it's great for him because he's talkative and he enjoys meeting new people, and it might not be for everyone. So you need to look at different things through homeschool evaluations, identifying your own strengths and weaknesses, and seeing, hey, do I have a good potential in a specific trade area? And then also discern. The Bible talks about discernment all the time. So prayerfully consider, ask the Lord, what is my career path, or what is the best career path for me? And, you can encourage lots of different trade options for your kids. Look at some of the different things. Like my oldest son, he has had many, many different jobs. At one point, he really wanted to be an electrician, and he tried that. It did not work for him. And then he said, no, I'm going to be a plumber. And he tried that, and that didn't work out for him until he finally found the place that fits him the best. And the last thing is believe in yourself. You have to have the self-confidence to be able to do whatever it is you set your mind to. When I started this podcast network, everyone kept telling me it couldn't be done, even the people I hired to build the website. And I had a vision for this that I really feel was from the Lord. And when I explained what I wanted done, one of the girls who did the basic website I still have today, because it works well, why fix it? Yes, it could be fancier, but a lot of you listen on an app. And her husband ended up being a coder and was able to code in some of the back-end stuff that we needed. And so it did work, and it was something that I wanted to, press on and persevere in. So, if it's something that is important to you, even if everyone says you can't do it, ignore them and press on if this is really what you want to do. Confidence is built with small little successes, and we all have challenges in our lives. How do you handle that challenge? Do you pitch a fit, or why is this always happening to me? Or do you say, okay, this happened, I'm going to learn from this experience, and I'm going to move on. And I love Philippians 4:13. I can do all things in him who strengthens me. And that is one of the scripture verses that I remember, with my whole heart. and I'm often praying to the Lord about different things, especially when they don't go right. And then talk to people who have inspiring stories, people who have overcome all the odds. And, I'm one of them. How can you build a network in the midst of homeschooling, in the midst of running different companies? And it can be done. I always had help. I did a lot of it myself at the very beginning, but as soon as I could afford to hire someone, I did. And even if it meant a little bit less money coming in, it was so worth it to me to be able to free up time to spend with my children. So if you're interested in podcasting, I have a do-it-yourself course for that as well. Due to time, I wasn't able to go through all of the links I have in the show notes or even on the podcast app. So make sure you go through and check those out if you're interested in podcasting. I have a do-it-yourself podcast, class for you, and there are lots of other things on our website as well as some others I've referenced. So thanks so much again for joining me. You can go to vintagehomeschoolmoms.com and look for this particular episode. It is 564 Prerequisites for a Long-Lasting and Satisfying Career, no matter what that career is. And until next time, I will talk to you soon. God bless and bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Visit Felice at MediaAngels.com and TheVintageHomeschoolMoms.com. Vintage Homeschool Moms is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network.